welcome to Level Sync, a Final Fantasy XI podcast with your hosts, DA Soccer, Lost Time Lord, and Quetch.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Level Sync, a Horizon Final Fantasy XI podcast. I'm your host this week, the Lost Time Lord. Along with me are my two favorite people of right now, DA Soccer. Hey DA.
Like,
what's up?
This moment or today?
Yeah,
moment.
It's this
right
moment.
now.
Okay.
I would
Right
never
now.
make that list otherwise. It's this moment.
And my friend Quetch. How are you guys doing today?
Good, chilling.
Awesome. Well, I know it's crazy, right? We haven't put out like a bi-weekly episode in a very long time, and this one's even shorter than a bi-weekly. We wanted to get this to you guys because it's just so exciting and awesome. Our friend Beasty agreed to sit down with us and do an interview. And for those of you who don't know Beasty, he's an amazing guy, a really good player. He plays really well, I guess is the way, but he plays really well.
I see him all the
but no,
H&M camps, now that you mention
Yeah,
it.
no, I mean, he's really good at the game and has also, I guess within the last year, decided to join the Horizon dev staff and give them a hand, and has spent a lot of time working on the Rebase. And we figured, since one of our most recent episodes, which was a couple of months ago, we talked about the Rebase. We've now got some updates, and we sat down with Beasty, and we had a chat with him. The savior of the Rebase, they call him, but we're really excited to sit down and talk to him. You guys get to learn about Beasty, find out who he is, maybe say hello to him in game. He's a really cool guy, and this interview is freaking amazing. So buckle in and get ready because we've got something real special for you guys. Happy President's Day from us. And here, we'll take it over to the interview. Unless you guys have something else you want to say first.
Oh, no, just really cool. I mean, to your point about our last episode about the Rebase, it seems like they've come a bit further, and Beasty's here to talk about it. It's really exciting.
I've just been helping hardcore players. Without being a hardcore myself, it's hilarious.
I helped the hardcore.
They
Nice.
trust me to heal. That's it.
That's awesome. But yeah, we're really excited for this interview. So buckle in, guys, and give it a listen, give it a watch. Make sure you check it out. Thank you all. Here we go. All right, and now we're here for the interview portion, the much-awaited interview portion, follow-up time. I know in our last episode, not the most recent one, but the one before it, we had Hookstar and Damaris, and they gave us an update about the Rebase, and that was back in, November, fellas? That was when we did that one?
Sounds right. Sounds
accurate.
accurate.
Late
It was
November?
before I turned 40. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was November. Anyways, we have more updates. Apparently, the savior of the Rebase is here with us today. As previously mentioned, I'd like to introduce our friend Beasty. Hello, Beasty. How are you today?
Hey guys, I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, it was our pleasure. Once we heard that you'd potentially be interested in talking, we jumped on it as quickly as we could. We're like, we're not letting this guy talk to anybody else. We're the guys. We're the ones.
Is the Mog Garden coming to Horizon? I see you there.
Is that is that why it's there?
No, but it makes for a nice backdrop. Maybe someday soon.
You said no way too fast. Don't try to pull us on that. You said no way too quickly.
Soon TM then.
Soon. Yeah. You know what? Like if there was actually work being done on the Maw Garden, I would say, you know what? Put that to the side, boys. You got other stuff to do. I'm more interested in the other stuff. Because wasn't the Maw Garden attached to Adeline? Wasn't that Seekers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really late, so
Yeah. I don't expect to see that anytime soon. Well, off the garden subject, let's get back to our guest here. Beasty, thank you for being here again. It is an absolute pleasure. Somebody who's working as closely as you are with the code base is always great to have on. So let's talk about you for a little bit. Who are you? Like, what's your role on the Horizon team? What you got, tell the world who you are.
all right. So everyone pretty much knows who I am in game. So Beasty, right? By profession, I actually do cybersecurity. So if anyone's familiar with that, And then by hobby, I do a lot of programming. So everything from C, C++, a little bit of assembly, Python, Lua, SQL, the list goes on. So, and I've been programming for just over 20 years. So definitely a passion of mine. Just to give myself a little bit of credibility, so in case people don't know, so I used to work at Blizzard. I've worked on Burning Crusade, Wrath of Lich King, Cataclysm, StarCraft 2, D3, and I also worked at NCSoft as well. So I've worked on like Aeon, Guild Wars 2, Lineage 2, WildStar, City of Heroes, a couple other games.
Oh, I played the shit out of Aeon when it came out. I was a little midget dude with a giant afro and my skin was green. I was like an Oompa Loompa with an afro. And then like you get the wings and I remember that game. It was good when I played it. That was fun.
Yeah, it was nice. It was a free to play game for the most part too. So that was really cool.
Yeah, that was fun.
That's really cool. Did you know Pirate Software since you worked at Blizzard?
No, Blizzard is a huge company. So they're, getting to know just anyone outside of your department is actually kind of hard unless you've had a reason to go outside of your department. But no, I did a lot of QA though. So
my boss used to work at Blizzard and he knew Pirate Software. Like he knew they worked together. And I won't say anything here because I don't want to, but my boss has some interesting things to say about him. Some rather unflattering, as you can imagine, things to say about him. But I'll keep that to myself.
Yeah, NDAs and all that fun stuff, Don't rat people out.
And slander. We don't want any of that.
Yeah, this isn't the FFXI drama subreddit,
Oh, gosh. So in terms of gaming, I've been gaming my whole life. My first game was SMB back on the NES, so probably older than I wish to admit to. So, but I'm not that old. I like to think. But I've been playing FFXI since May 2002 when it launched on PS2. So I've been on FFXI for a very long time. Obviously, I played WoW, StarCraft, Diablo, League of Legends, PoE. But pretty much anymore, it's just XI, some retro games on like SNES and N64, older Final Fantasy working through the pixel remasters. So,
did you play any other private servers at all? I know you said you've been playing since the release, basically of. 11.
Yes. So I actually started, my first private server was Nozomi shortly after he first started up his server. I played over there for several years. That's when I first started getting into the private server community for 11. Helped fix a few random things over there. Got my first local copy of the bad word, I guess you could call it, the Dark Star project, that clusterfuck of code. And so that's where I first got started messing around with private server stuff. I took a break for a while after a couple, 3 years on Nozomi. And then when I came back, I started playing on Eden. And I was on Eden for basically until Horizon launched. So after I stopped playing on retail, I never really went back to retail. I kind of felt like retail lost its touch with what it was when it first came out, with the, everyone playing together. You need people to play the game, and definitely not the same game now.
On retail, you're talking about, right?
Yes, on retail.
Yeah. So, if you had a group of people and you were playing together, you probably wouldn't steal a speed belt or anything, would you?
Oh, no, never. Never would do that.
You would never do something like that, right?
Absolutely not. Why would you ask that? No.
I don't know. It just seemed like a random question that I would ask, our guest.
Is there a story there?
No story behind it or anything like that?
No. My Sherlock Holmes senses are tingling. I feel like there's a clue.
You can't inside joke on a fucking podcast. Fucking
If you know, you know.
Yeah,
Things were different. That was, it
was a different time, a different Beasty.
Good grief. LTL is going to grill me.
No.
Bust your balls, son. Sorry.
So, in terms of what I do on the Horizon team, so just recently kind of moved up into the lead developer role. So, and right now I'm currently leading the Rebase effort. So, should hopefully get some good info out of me for that one. I joined the Horizon team back in May last year, so getting close to my 1 year mark with them. And in terms of what I do, it's a volunteer project. There's no assigned role per se. So I'll do everything from code reviews, fixing random bugs, implementing features, closing out exploits that people love to find and not share with us. Helping right now over the last couple months been helping one of our newer devs kind of get up to speed too. So it's been really fun. This is probably the most organized I've seen on, or at least with the teams I've worked with in the private server community. And basically right now everything is, for me, for the most part, 99% of it is just rebase, because I'm determined to get us through this rebase. So
What gave you the motivation or determination to do it?
So I actually, out of all the private servers I've played, I think Horizon is the one I've had the most fun on. And we have a great, fairly steady, surprisingly, concurrency, or number of players that are consistently online every day. So right now, I would love us to get into Treasures. Treasures is hinging on the rebase. And so, it's a personal motivation, because maybe for slightly selfish reasons, but I think everyone shares that reason too. I think we all want to get into Treasures and beyond. So getting over this hurdle is the roadblock that's preventing it. So I'm determined to get it out of our way.
That's fair. So, without saying anything that you can't, and I'm not trying to ask any questions that you shouldn't be answering, but once the rebase is done, and I'm not going to ask when it should be done, but when the rebase is finished, should TOAU come in short order? Or is there still a lot of work to do on TOAU? Or is it pretty much wrapped up for what you guys wanted to release for part 1 of TOAU, but we have to wait for the rebase for that to happen? Whatever you can actually tell us, if I don't want to press.
I'll try my best to answer this. I will be slightly vague, and I will not give an ETA.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah.
So once the rebase is done, there's a lot of core systems that have been updated. You guys got a good description of some of that stuff when you did the interview with Damaris and Hook.
Right.
And basically, once we get through the rebase, there's going to be at least some window of time. I have no idea what that window actually is, where we're going to have to make sure that we've got things back to where they are now.
Right. So they were saying on the previous podcast, they could release it right now, the rebase, but we would lose a lot of that information. So what you're saying is that once the rebase is done and we're actually sure that everything's in place and everything is where it is right now as we stand, then we can move on, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah. From as best as I can say it, there'll be post rebase. I would assume some of us are going to be working on fixing any lingering issues from the rebase, but there's also going to be people that are working on finishing the prep work for Treasures and other upcoming content. So and I don't know what the order will be necessarily. Is it, I know a lot of people are asking for T3 HE&M. Some people are asking strictly for Treasures. Some people want to see things like AV. So all of that stuff is in the pipeline, but I don't have an order for you or anything like that. But yeah, there will be a sometime in between the rebase and the next content that is released, because obviously a lot of effort is going into the rebase, and there's only so many man hours between everyone that's on the team. So if everyone's working on the rebase, there's not a lot of time going into other things. But once the rebase is done, the splitting of those hours can be shifted to
Other things.
other projects.
Yeah, so like to your point about like people are, I want this, I want that, I want this. I think that the reality is that people just want content, right? Like you can only level so many characters and all that kind of stuff and do the same content over and over again. And I think that the big thing is that people love Horizon, and I think that's obvious. A lot of people, to your earlier point, a lot of people still log in. We have a ton of concurrent players that are playing on Horizon. People want to enjoy Horizon and keep playing. And the job that's been done so far, by and large, has been pretty great. With the changes that were made and like the HE&Ms themselves, I have some issues with the gear that drops in the HE&Ms, but the mechanics and the fights themselves are really solid and really fun. So I think that people just want to do new things. You know what I mean? So I think that that's probably where a lot of that comes from. Before I forget, and we're gonna get a little bit deeper into the weeds here, but before we move on, when we talk about the rebase and we talk about all this work that you and the rest of the guys and the rest of the team, sorry, are putting in, is there any you guys have any kind of like test server where you're deploying the changes to make sure that they work alongside the changes that you're making, or are you just doing everything blind without the ability to test that the end product is actually working?
Yeah, so we definitely have a test server. It's not a public facing server, so obviously. But yeah, we anytime we make changes, we'll send it to our test server first, and then assuming it doesn't break anything on our test server, then at least from what we can test with our limited resources, then we send it over to the live server. Granted, players are much better at breaking things than a handful of devs, especially when you got 2,000 people hammering something at the same time. So some of that, like stress testing, is a little bit harder for us to test, but yeah, we do have a server for testing.
As a QA director, believe me, I'm very, very aware of the wanting to break everything that you've done that players like to do to a game. Trust me, that's my entire life.
Is it for the closed testing server? Is it just for the people that are working on everything, or can other people like sign up and go through prerequisites to be able to get in and be able to help test? I don't know shit about coding, but I have time and I would love to break stuff.
So currently, we have people that have access to the test server when we need to, like when HE&M tier 2, when right before like content, we have a test team that we can call on and utilize for some of the smaller like bug fixes and stuff like that. Usually that'll get pulled in with like whoever submits the bug gets it onto beta, and then they'll we can test it over there on our beta server or test server at the if it's something really small. But obviously for content like HE&M and stuff like that, we actually have a test team. I don't have a role necessarily in how or who gets chosen for that, or if we're going to pull more people in. A lot of times when we call in the testing, I think they see how many people are still interested, and if there's not enough people, then we'll open up on the Discord server. They'll announce that we're looking for testers, and they'll pull in people. I think they did that for tier 2 HE&M. So I would assume it's probably this similar cycle of events when new content comes out.
Like I said, I don't know shit about coding, but if I can help in any way, I definitely want to. So I'll be sure to try to get my name on the list. I'll keep an eye on the Discord. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
My
So
favorite
toxic,
story.
okay?
What was that?
It said he's so toxic. Sorry.
My favorite story to come out of the HE&M tier 2 testing was that hard mode wasn't spoiled as a mechanic, and like we had to wait for like one of the devs to make a post like and there might be hard mode. It was in like an update patch note or something like that, and then the community is like, wait, what? And then even the spawning of the hard mode wasn't spoiled either. So that I don't know. I just love that because obviously you guys had players in their testing that were part of like H&M link shells and stuff like that. And then we still got to, as a community, kind of discover these things on our own. And that just like, to me, that's like, it just felt special. I don't know if you were aware of any of that, Beastie, or around for that.
Yeah. So yeah, we knew ahead of time. We tried to see if anyone would figure it out, but yeah, eventually they did drop the hint. Yeah, and I think it was something like the something for normal mode HENM or whatever, which alluded to the fact that there was something other than normal.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was kind of fun watching players try and figure it out. Although I do think that some players got a little frustrated at, you know, how hard it was to figure out, but it was when new content comes out, the dev team and the testers can't participate. So it's fun sitting on the sideline watching my link shell wipe over and over and over.
For adding a sense of discovery and finding new things in a game that's old enough to drink, drive, vote, and everything else, and have a family. This game is old as shit. For adding that sense of discovery is actually kind of special. So even though it may frustrate people, they'll get over it because that's something that most private servers or abilities can't be done. So I think that's great.
Yeah, as far as adding like the sense of discovery back into 11, I think that particular moment for me was like a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I love discovering new things. So when it's nice when not everything is figured out and you can't just go to a wiki or something and get all the info you need. You actually have to play the game instead of having someone tell you how to play.
Like a tinfoil hat. Quetch is happy about that.
No comment.
All right, back to the topic at hand. Something that I like to keep revisiting, and really the impetus for our last episode with Hook and Damaris, is like, what is the rebase? And I think we left that episode with a little bit of added understanding, but I think it bears like repeating, and I'd like to hear your perspective. So what exactly is the rebase? Those two words, the rebase, have become kind of like meme worthy. But what is that? And why is it important to moving forward with the other content?
All right. So the Beastie definition, I guess. You are correct at this point. It's basically become a meme, and I hate that. But the rebase in and of itself is basically the code that the server runs on is becoming older and antiquated. It is basically, you've got like a old Honda Civic that you're driving around. It's time to, 20 plus years down the line, it's time to look at getting yourself a new set of wheels so you can get around more reliably, faster, etc. So that is basically what the rebase is. We are running on ASB, Air Sky Boat, which was a fork of LSB, but that fork was created several years ago at this point. It was touched on in the last episode too, but basically things had changed in ASB that caused what's known as a divergence from the parent repository of LSB, Land Sam Boat. And that has prevented ASB from being able to continue to receive updates from LSB because they're no longer compatible. So LSB has continued with development, and they have significant performance increases, a lot less bugs, a lot less crashes, more robust frameworks and systems in place, more accurate tuning, a whole slew of benefits. And we don't get access to those at least right now, because we are still running on the old code. So we have to update our core system, what the server is running on, to be able to take in these new updates. As time goes on, ASB falls further and further behind it, and LSB keeps moving more and more ahead. And eventually it would hit a point where, we would hit a limit of what we're able to do with our existing code base. So that is why it's important for the rebase to happen. Basically, for the health of the server, for the player experience in terms of optimized performance, less lag, less issues with crashes and random bugs and stuff like that. We need to get ourselves up on that new system. And we've come, for lack of better words, we've kind of come full circle a couple times, rehashing how do we do this, because it is a huge undertaking. And so we finally settled on a plan of action and have started really moving forward on that plan of action. So there's still a lot of work to do, but I guess, and I'm sure you'll probably ask more questions about this, but and I can get into it in more detail. But at an overview, that is what the rebase is. It's us upgrading from our old dated system to the for lack of better words, latest and greatest model that we can run on. So that way things start operating more accurately and more reliably.
I see. All right. So, thank you for that explanation for people who didn't know. That's pretty much in line exactly with what, we were told last time, but I'm really glad to hear that hasn't changed. You guys are on the same page at the very least. So, according to many that I've spoken to, I do have friends within the Horizon behind the scenes. You have been hailed as the savior of the rebase. So I'm curious, and I know that the rest of the community is also curious. What is it that you have done? What is it that you're bringing to this project that has moved it forward leaps and bounds? And so, basically, what has been explained is now that Beasty's on it, we're moving so much more, quickly. Things are going so much better. It's actually moving and shaking, and we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So what is it that Beasty has brought to the table that is making these claims come out of the team, basically?
Well, so the short version is that I'm the one that kind of took charge over things. I guess I'll try and be as candid as possible without saying too much. And Damaris and Hook talked about this on when you guys had them on. It's a huge project and a huge undertaking, no matter what approach we take. There were previous iterations of us. Okay, what if we try this? What if we try that? What if, hashing ideas, testing the idea, and trying to see how far it would get. Testing idea 2, see how far that one would get. And basically, after seeing for progress getting made, but then the ball stops rolling in the right direction because hiccups or obstacles come up in that idea's path. I basically just kind of made the executive decision that I'm going to focus solely on the rebase, and we're going to take this direction, and we're going to stick with this, and we're going to get organized with this, and basically, I feel like I'm tooting my own horn here, but
Shoot away, my friend. Shoot.
it's basically I wasn't going to just say this is how we're doing it and then say, okay, go do it. I'm a firm believer in leading by example. I've been in management before, and one of the things I operate by when I'm in those roles is I never ask people to do something I'm not willing to do myself. So if that means I'm going to sit and ask for a rebase, I'm going to sit there and put in as much time as I need to also make sure that the rebase is staying on track, staying organized, and continuously moving forward. And dealing with obstacles and roadblocks as they come up.
So the answer is you came in and project managed the shit out of it.
Doing my best.
You're coming in and you're like the new PM, and stuff is going okay. All right, I mean that makes sense. Like I guess that like everybody was doing stuff, so that kind of like leads into another question. So not saying that you're officially the project manager or anything, but you're kind of taking on that role a little bit. So let's take a step back. So like we're looking at the project of the rebase, right? Like someone like me doesn't necessarily even understand all of what goes into that in my livelihood and careers in software QA. So let's say we're looking at this big picture, the big bundle. There's like 400 things that need to get done for the rebase. How do you, when you look at that and you look at everything that needs to be done, how do you determine like what chunks of things need to get done and in what order do they get done? Or is it that certain things have to be done before other things get started?
Okay, so maybe this is a little too technical. Maybe it's not. But the short version is we've basically had to create an itemized list of anything Era Plus or custom. And I get this huge list, and it's split off into the types of code that the code base deals with, which is C++, Lua, and SQL.
Okay.
And it is looking at those individual things and saying, okay, this is something that can be done pretty much at any point in time. We can shove it into a module. This is something we have to is not able to be put into a module. So we have to use this other method to maintain this piece of code. But in order to do that, that piece of code has to be re-implemented, refactored, and kind of stashed off to the side until we're ready for it. And
the work that you're doing though, like when you say that you're like going in and you're refactoring the code, is it like you're just putting in different hooks, or you have to like rewrite it in a different language? Like what is exactly that like is being like when you're working on a particular thing, what exactly are you doing?
Okay, so for instance, some of our Era Plus changes are
let's go with King Arthro, for example. There you go.
Okay, so King Arthro, that's actually surprisingly a fairly easy change. However, the way we implemented King Arthro, it was implemented directly into the code base, into the King Arthro script file, which is a Lua file.
Right.
That specific code, if we were to slap the rebase on right now, it would overwrite whatever is in that file. So all of the Era Plus stuff would, right, yeah. So all of that Era Plus code would go poof. So what we have to do is we have to strip out all of that custom code, slap it into a module, and then put that module in its correct spot, so that way when we pull down code from in the future, we don't risk having that main Lua file overwritten again. Back at the beginning of the server, you guys probably saw something to that effect, where sometimes a bug would get fixed and then a patch would come through and the bug got unfixed.
Yep.
That is a perfect example of what happens when code is not modularized, because basically what happens is we pull down code from a parent repository like ASB or LSB, and it overwrites whatever was in that file. The module system allows us to basically say, hey, I know there's this file here, but you're not going to run the code in that file. You're actually going to run this custom code that we've built and put off to the side in a safe spot where it's not going to get overwritten after every up.
I see. So you're going in and you're altering the LSB code to point it at these modules that you're creating for all of the new Era Plus stuff, so that instead of running its own code and overwriting what you guys have there, it's instead running the modules.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, that makes sense.
And for what it's worth, our goal is to avoid editing as much as possible any of the LSB code. I guess we'll dip into that because the less code that we mess with on the LSB side and push out, and we've pushed that code out to a module, the less issues we have updating in the future. So that's the Lua side. The core side, the core side is a lot more intricate. There's only the module system allows us to do some stuff in C++ with that module system with overrides. There's only some things we can do. There's actually quite a few little, I guess you can call it, tinkerings that have happened that are inside of the C++ stuff. That is a little bit more complex in that we have to go into the LSB C++ side, find out a lot of the function names have changed. So, and a lot of the code has moved around. So we have to locate where that code is, put in the change that we would need for that Era Plus change. And then we, this is probably going to be too technical. Then we have to actually generate like a patch file for that. That basically is, so that way, anytime we pull down from LSB, we reapply that patch and it places the code back where it needs to be. Because some of the stuff inside of the core system cannot be pushed out into a module. So that's a more time-consuming task.
I feel like
web of moving pieces. Holy shit.
I feel like when we had Hook and Damaris on, I think that they kind of intimated at some of that.
They did.
That like that decision process on how to handle that was still kind of going on, or you were still figuring out which needs the patch and which needs a module, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so that's kind of, I guess, maybe hopefully I'm not messing up, planned questions or anything, but I'll segue into it. So that's basically, that took a lot of time and effort. So I basically took over the Rebase towards the end of November. I basically spent the past 2 months, I don't want to know how many hours, combing through our code base and identifying everything that I just talked about, things that are needed to go into a module, and things within our core system or our C++ code side that have to be, we have to strip it out, re-implement it on top of another code base, and then have some sort of a patch management system. And now we have and again, jumping around here, but basically that stage is complete. So now we have a list of absolutely everything. And for what it's worth, when I say Era Plus or custom, a lot of people, I think there's a common misconception on Era Plus / custom. A lot of people thinking job ability changes, etc., which they do include those, but there's also a lot of quality of life things, a lot of custom bug fixes and miscellaneous things that are completely behind the scenes that also are encompassed in there that a lot of people don't see. So there's, I won't give an exact number, but I will say there's a sizable amount, several hundred changes that need to be accounted for. And so combing through the code base, which if you don't know, the code base is over 37,000 files. There's a lot of code in the code base. So that is probably a huge portion of the Rebase effort, was going through and finding what we have done differently than, LSB at this point. So that way we could have a list of tasks that basically need to be done. I think if I remember correctly, Damaris, I think, mentioned it, but basically the majority of the work is going through and finding these changes. Because not everything was notated, especially like minor bug fixes and stuff like that. Once that list is created, then it's just a matter of going through and knocking the items off the list one at a time. And then we would go into a testing phase and then push it out to the server. So the needle in a haystack hunt is basically completed. We've gotten through that portion of the Rebase. So again, I'm not going to give any
list. Of course, if we you have a finalized list of everything that needs to be done. The end is in sight, as you're saying.
Yeah, there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Nice.
That's really awesome to hear, actually. Yeah, so I remember them talking about that.
Yeah, I won't say like how long it's going to take. And, again, this is ultimately, it's a volunteer project, right? So people put in the time that they can put in. Some people have more time than others. But it's when it gets done, it gets done. And I know as we get closer, momentum will start moving faster, right? So people will be excited to get through this, get over it, finally get past it. So that's... yeah, go for it.
I have an interesting question, and I just thought of this. So when the rebase is done, whenever that is, like let's say, okay, we're ready to roll out the rebase, right? So what does rolling out the rebase look like from your side? Is it a simple matter of flipping a switch and like changing like IP forwarding or something so that now when you log into Horizon, it's pointing to a different server? Are you overwriting the server space that you already have? And part two of that question is, when it does roll out, are users going to I can't imagine that it's just a patch. Are we going to have to reinstall Horizon completely?
So as far as I know, it's basically going to use the existing server space that we have. I don't think, I don't believe we're going to try and host an old server and a new server at the same time. And on that note, as far as like, let's just say the rebase was done right now and we decided to, it literally would be us flicking a switch or clicking a button to basically say, okay, put all this code onto the live server. We build it, we spin up the server, and on the player facing side, in theory, nothing changes. No, the rebase is strictly server side. So in theory, you guys wouldn't have any client side updates. You wouldn't notice anything different other than some of the enhancements while you're in game itself, with like mob behaviors or something like that. But there wouldn't be anything crazy. And in an ideal world, that would be the perfect rebase launch, where you guys log in, nothing happens, nothing doesn't seem like anything's really changed on your end. That would be amazing.
I'm laughing because I think it would be funny that if that occurred, then you guys roll out a week later and be like, oh, by the way, the rebase was done last week. We're ready to rock and roll with a few things.
No way.
That's a good idea.
No way.
Dude.
You would shout that shit from the rooftop.
I know
You're
you
gonna
should.
see Eric with
You
fireworks. Doing fireworks like, finally done, finally done.
I agree, you should, but how funny would it be to like just let it go for a week and not say shit, and then be like, by the way, the thing you guys have been, bitching about, it's been done. And just like throw it back at everyone.
I mean, that would be a great test, right? Like,
See if anybody noticed.
Nobody said anything. Nobody noticed anything. It went flawless, because if that happens, that means that everything went perfectly, and there were no issues.
An extended maintenance day, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it would be a rather long maintenance on that day, just because everything has to get redone, rebuilt on the server.
That happened like 3 weeks ago. There was a 4-hour maintenance.
That's what that was one of the things I was going to ask. Is like, I mean, you may not know this, but when it comes to rebase day and you guys are doing that, how long does it take to build like the servers, as far as like updating all of the information with everything new?
I mean, so realistically, it probably, in terms of actual time frame, I would say maybe like if everything goes right, like hop maybe like 45 minutes, maybe an hour.
Really?
It's a matter of the server pulling in the code, compiling it, which if you've ever made a local copy, you can compile the code and see how long it takes. It's actually one of the benefits on LSV, is that, so when I run my local server right now, it takes several minutes, in the ballpark range of like 5 to 8 minutes to start up the server from the time I click like start the server. LSV literally starts up in like 2 minutes. So, and that's an example of like the speed and performance improvements that we're picking up from this rebase. Things load faster, move faster, and in theory, who knows, maybe weekly maintenances are going to be even shorter than they already are. Obviously, and LTL, if you do QA or if you've ever messed with live servers before after a maintenance, usually you do like some sort of sanity check on the server too, right? After the servers come up, before the players can log in, you hop on to like a dev or QA character and you double check like, hey, does the server up? Am I able to zone? Does the auction house still work? Can I search myself? Basics, stuff to make sure that everything is actually working the way it's supposed to be before you open the floodgate.
When I worked at Vivendi, when they owned Blizzard still, on WoW maintenance days, because we were on the same network, we could get in before anybody else could get in. So we would be on a server that normally had like 5,000-6,000 people or however many. I don't even remember how many people would be on there. We would be on there like a half hour to an hour before everybody else, and it's like, oh, look, these NMs are all up. Oh, hey, let's go check it out. Let's go kill these.
Hey, look at that. Padfoot setting up. Let's see if the drops are working.
Oh, I wonder.
Eastern Shadow, too. What? Let's go.
Oh, my goodness. An Astro Earring and an Ebo. All for me? Hey.
Let's just swing by Argus real quick.
Yeah.
Let's see if he's up.
And then the GM tickets start flowing. The server restarted and this NM isn't up.
Yeah, that would mess the NMs all up. You should just make a treaty and make an agreement on being able to rotate who gets what NM.
Oh gosh. The NM spreadsheet is coming.
Jeez. You
go ahead.
mentioned you had mentioned something there about the modules again. I think I had heard somewhere that recently LSB's module based system had some improvements. Is there anything there you could just kind of talk to
Uh,
about that?
so yeah, so LSB's the original module system that Horizon had access to when the server launched was definitely not as robust as the current system that's in LSB, and basically allows with like I don't want to get too technical because it is pretty technical, but basically there's a lot more flexibility, a lot more customization, a lot more options, a lot more functionality that has been added in terms of what you can do with uh, a module, or even like a custom NPC. Like prior, like you might be able to have like a trigger action when you click on the NPC, or a trade action, but um, now we can go through and change just about every aspect of the NPC, have it move around. Um, you can set up like, for lack of, I guess a better way to do it is just explain it like this. For instance, like on custom mobs and NPCs and stuff like that, there were only certain like functionalities that were included at the start. Those functionalities have been improved to include just about everything that a normal mob or NPC has access to now. When it comes to what we can module and how we module it, for instance, like quest, I think Hook is talked a lot about this because he was doing a lot of quests. We have much more robust ability to create overrides, which overrides are contained inside of a module. A module is basically a file that contains overrides, and we can, before, like we would have to implement something like self-contained in that module. Now those certain things are able to cross over from module to module. We have a lot more flexibility, at least in where we can, on what is allowed to basically go into those modules and those overrides. So in terms of maintaining custom content or Era Plus content and generating new custom and Era Plus content, that is largely been expanded, and the performance on those things has been improved. So that's probably the best I can get without getting super techie on it.
Okay.
So
That sounds good. I mean, that really is. So here's the only, like, I guess, hard question that we're gonna ask you, and feel free to not answer it or answer it or whatever. It's completely up to you. So I'm gonna make up arbitrary numbers, okay? And I want to preface anything that I say that these are arbitrary numbers that I'm making up here, okay? So let's say when we were talking to Damaris and Hookstar that they were 30% complete with the rebase. This is arbitrary number. I'm not saying that they were 30% done with the rebase. I don't know what percent done they were. I don't have any information on that at all. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that they were 30% done. Since you've come in and started to PM that bitch, what percentage of completion would you say you've added to the project?
Okay, that is a tough question. And I say that I'll give a little background
Sure.
on the rebase. And so this is like, I like the idea that we're trying to be more open with the community about some things. So this is going to give a little bit of history, and then I will give you a number.
Okay.
So I would say at this point, Well, okay. Actually, I'm like brainstorming because there's a lot I kind of have to touch on here. So previously, when you had Hook and like, actually, let me go even further back. The initial notion of the rebase, right? Originally, it was LSB goes down to ASB, and ASB comes down to Horizon. The problem with, and that's where the Rebase project started, was we were going to basically try and turn ASB into just a giant cluster of modules that stacks on top of LSB that gives era or mostly era accurate content. And then on top of that, we were going to module Horizon to slap that on top of ASB, which gave us the Era Plus and custom stuff that Horizon had. That undertaking was immensely, or probably tenfold more time consuming to actually accomplish and practice. It sounded good on paper. However, in practicality, it meant that we would have to maintain not only Horizon, but also ASB. And we would have to account for those like changes that I've mentioned before, like optimizations or changes in function names and all that stuff in LSB. We would have to account for that in the module system of ASB, and then account for that again in the Horizon codebase modules that laid on top of that. So not only was it going to be basically rebasing ASB and then moduling ASB, then rebasing Horizon and moduling Horizon, and then maintaining those modules and changes across two code bases is just too much. So that was the first kind of attempt at the rebase when it first started. And then, we actually made a really good attempt at it. We had a whole diff of basically the differences between LSB and ASB, and we were combing through them. But again, it sounded good on paper, but once we got a list down and started going through things, and we realized, holy crud, this is actually quite a lot. Some of this stuff has already been fixed up in LSB, and just never got pulled down to ASB. So now we have two different fixes. Which one's more right? It was massive. Then the it was so like I said, it was basically too large of an undertaking for just the Horizon team. The next possibility was that we said, okay, what if we just take the stuff that is fixed on ASB and push it up to LSB, and push all of this stuff up to LSB, and then we'll take down LSB. We did make headway on that attempt too. However, and I think Cook and Damaris talked about this too, LSB is a lot different than ASB in terms of what they will take. Where ASB used to be basically a best effort. If it seemed like this was what it was supposed to do, ASB would take it. LSB is not like that at all. A lot of times they want retail captures, video evidence. They want recent things, stuff like just the wikis, which are player maintained without necessarily having to submit any sort of evidence or proof. That's not considered a viable method of proving that the code you're trying to add to LSB is good. So this is, and to their credit, it's actually for the best that things get revisited. That's actually how we discover new things. And for instance, a good example of this is Movopolis water. So extensive testing has been done on this because it was checked on LSB. Movopolis water does nothing on retail. Absolutely nothing. And if you read the item description, it actually makes sense. It's literally soda water. I mean, nothing. Last time I drank soda water, You don't get. You don't. It's just. It's like, what is this?
Did
feel
you drink it
refreshed.
on Lights Day? You just
Exactly.
I-
Some people feel refreshed.
But to be fair, right? So that was something that came from the wiki, right? Someone saw that and put it into ASB. And then ASB said, okay, well, we have nothing to say to the contrary. So it got put into ASB. And then that got pulled down to Horizon. And now we have Movopolis water with its beautiful 30-minute refresh. However, that is not, like I said, it's not how it works on retail. They have tried extensively to trigger this buff and nothing happens with it. It is flavorless, emptyless, and does not give you any health benefits. I'm not sure what the future of Movopolis water will be post rebase just yet. Maybe our balance team will say, hey, we can keep it as an Era Plus change. But in terms of the code bases, right, like this is why LSV won't take just arbitrary proof. They want hard proof of what we can do. So when we went into the rebase trying to send up all this code off ASB into LSB, the LSB team basically came back and said, and not as many or as few words as possible, where's the proof for all of this? Like, do you guys have proof that this is how all of this stuff works, so that this is how this quest works? Are you sure you've gotten all the NPC interactions on this quest? Are you sure that this is the exact order? Are you sure that this is the exact effects? And so a lot of it became, okay, well, we can go start capturing it. But when you have, like, ASB had all these quests that had been coded in as best effort, trying to get people onto retail to go recapture those quests for the proof and then putting them into LSB. And then, like, it wasn't so much that the task itself was difficult, so much as it, again, was going to come down to an extremely time-consuming task of recapturing, I don't want to know how many changes, and trying to get those burdens of proof up to LSB. And so that attempt eventually kind of stopped once we kept getting the roadblock of where's your burden of proof, where's your burden of proof. Not to say that that process has not continued, because there is a lot of stuff, but it's just an ongoing task of migrating things that are fixed as people gather the capture data and then submitting them to LSB. So that was kind of like our second pass at the rebase, which is the third pass. When we start talking about this, I'd say late October, early November, or sometime in the fall, basically, of last year, where I essentially stepped in and said, okay, at this point, like, the option 1 didn't really work. Option 2 didn't really work. So that basically leaves us with option number 3, and we have to move forward with this. We've kind of been dangling the carrot on a stick for long enough. We need to just commit to something. So at this point, it is, and hopefully I'm not saying too much, but basically we are going to completely cut ASB out of the equation. Maintaining ASB on top of maintaining Horizon is too much. Trying to get all of ASB into LSB in one foul swoop is not going to happen in any sort of timely fashion. It is still in progress, and like I said, and people are still working on doing that, but we've cut ASB out of the equation. And we will take what LSB currently has and put all of the Horizon and Air Plus stuff on top of that, just directly. No ASB in the equation anymore. And the idea being that eventually everything will get added to LSB, but we don't want to have to sit here and wait on our rebase until that happens. And things that are, let's say, like a quest, if this is a pivotal request for something or other, and it's for some reason not LSB, if we really have to, we can come in and make a module of said quest to get it working on Horizon until LSB pulls it into their code base. Once they pull it into their code base and we pull it down, we can get rid of that module. We don't need it anymore.
It'll be the same code, like between the module.
Yeah, it would
and
largely be the same code, just not in a module.
Right, gotcha. Okay.
And so that's basically where the rebase was. So then it became the task that I kind of talked about earlier, which was, okay, well, so the first step of this is, yes, we know we have job abilities and relics and all these custom changes, but there was also a lot more behind the scenes. And so it became the process. I guess if I had to, I could put it into kind of like a five-stage thing, with the first stage being probably one of the most time-intensive pieces of this, which was going through the code base, pulling out identifying all of our custom code, Era Plus code, etc. Going through and reviewing, and so that would be the first phase, was creating that list, which involved sifting through the code base for everything. I went through I had a little help, so I won't discredit the people that are helping, but we went through every commit and PR that has ever been submitted to Horizon since its inception, pulling out every single piece of custom code and putting it into a list, essentially. We're in the process of right now of going through and classifying, like, okay, this can go into a module, this can't. This just needs to go because this fixed a bug, but LSB's already fixed that bug, so we don't need to worry about it anymore. So we're going through that process right now. That'll trim down the list, hopefully by a sizable amount. And then it becomes, like I said, we basically take that finalized list, we start implementing our modules and our custom, patches or whatever. And we start implementing that stuff on top of a new branch that uses LSB as our base code line. We would test it internally first to make sure the server doesn't crash every 5 minutes or every time someone tries to change jobs or whatever. Basically get it into a stable state. And then once we get it into a stable state, we would push it out to live and watch the players just crush all of the work that we thought was perfect and flawless in like 5 minutes, or most likely. But basically we'd push it out to live. And this is why I said there's a delay between Rebase and whatever the next content is, whether it's treasures, HENM, whatever. And that's because we know that once the players get access to things, they will find things that we didn't find, and we need to kind of smooth out. At that same time during there, ideally we have some people continuing to work. There are people actively working on how we're going to do treasure jobs like Blue Mage and Pup and stuff like that. And once they're ready, and assuming the server is still in a stable state, then we move forward with that content. So when you ask for a percentage,
well, it's tough how do you answer that now? Because basically you completely restarted what you were doing since they were here, basically. I mean, some work had been done, but now you've kind of like compartmentalized it. So I guess
Yes.
a better question would be, so since you listed, and I know you didn't count all the way through 5, but it was kind of easy to tell what your like 5 stages were. And the first stage is acceptance. No, I'm curious, like,
I'm in denial stage right now.
it's the initial stage. So in that list, like when you go down those stages, like, where are you guys right now? Like, not percentage wise, not how far done are you, and this should in no way indicate that there is a certain percentage of completion done. You've already identified all the stuff that you need to do, and are you guys now is like the big push to put all of this stuff into modules and then hook it up to LSB or to Horizon so that LSB doesn't overwrite it?
Okay, so I would say, so I'll say the stages. I would say we're isolating our changes, reviewing those changes, refactoring those changes, testing those changes, and then the fifth is just all encompassing push it to live, right?
Release, yeah.
And for each of those stages, I would say isolate in terms of just a very generalized sense. What isolating all of our changes was a very large task. The code base is huge.
Right.
Reviewing the changes is probably in terms of, and I'm going to use like short to very long. So isolating, very long. Reviewing, probably short to medium, because it's literally us combing through the list and saying, do we need to worry about this anymore or not?
Right.
Refactoring, probably medium. Testing, probably short to medium. And then launch would be launch. So the hardest part of this is, in terms of isolating those changes, is done. In terms of I guess you could call it the 3 attempts at Rebase that have happened, this is the furthest we've been on any of our passes so far on the Rebase. Getting to the point where we're actually able to get into and start re-implementing things on top of a new code base. We already have the code, and so re-implementing it doesn't, while it might sound like it might take a really long time, it really shouldn't, because we know what's supposed to happen. We already have existing code, and it's just a matter of making the tweaks that are required so that way it works under the new system and ensuring that it's working like it's supposed to. There's no coding from the ground up, so to speak, when the changes were initially created. Like, how do we want to do this? Well, we already know how we did this, and we know how we can do this in the future.
Right, the design process has already happened for these things, so now it's just re-implementing them.
Exactly. Yeah. So
really encouraging.
I don't want
good news.
While I won't give ETAs, and just because, again, volunteer and people put in the time that we have when we have it. But getting to this point is, like I said, the furthest that this has ever come. And I'm confident that we're actually going to make it through this. And so I know it's been a long time. I've only been on the code base for, technically less than a year, right? So there's only so much that I've been able to contribute in the time that I've been here. But I do think that, and I think the other devs also share this sentiment, because like you were saying, people are happy that this is happening, right? The other devs included. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, like I said. It is going to happen, and as much as I would like it to be done this Friday, it's probably not going to be done this Friday, or even next Friday, or the Friday after that. It's going to take
Fridays, though.
Damn you, Hugin!
It is going to get done, and I know, myself included, because the announcement of the rebase happened before I was involved on the team, right? And so I share in the sentiments of man, we've been waiting for this for a really long time. This is I would say that the hope and the vision and the goalpost is there and in sight. How long it takes to get there, I don't know, but we will get there.
We're not in field goal range yet, boys, but we're getting close.
Yeah, we're not at the 40-yard line, but we're definitely not at the 10-yard line. We're getting there.
Let sports metaphors continue. I love it.
Super Bowl.
DA
Yeah.
is really excited with his Titans jersey on.
Oh, we're dead last. First pick. I got a lighter question for you, if that's
Okay.
all right. The lighter question would be, with you bringing the new life and kind of breath of fresh air to get the focus on the rebase and the progress that's been made recently over the past couple months on this, is it more of a passion project of you that you want this shit to get done, or is it more that I enjoy this fun coding situation? How much of a balance did it start with, this should be fun coding, to okay, it's more of I want to get this shit done, and it's less fun, but it's that drive? How much of a passion to fun is your current progress? I would say passion to fun ratio.
I would say this probably actually ties into my profession / passion, which I enjoy taking things, ripping them apart, figuring out how they work, maybe finding a way to enhance them, fix them, and put it back together again. That's just a passion of mine. If people in the professional world know me as the psychopath that will, like, if I'm working on a project and I'm real, like, and it itches a part of my brain when I come across a problem and I'm like, why can't I figure this out? And I will sit there for 16 hours, I'll forget to go pee or whatever, and I'll just sit there and like my brain just will not let it go until it gets fixed. So when I joined the team, it was a mix of, I think I would be good at this. There's plenty of little bugs that I'd love to be able to help fix to make this better. And then as I joined the team, learning about the current progress of the rebase, finding little pieces to help on like some of the other passes that had happened, and finally realizing, okay, something needs to change so that way we actually get through this before 2030, right?
Oh.
And so finally that little part of my brain got itched, and it was like, okay, you're going to go fix this because this is going to be problematic going forward. Like, this has to be done. So it started as like, I like the idea of fixing things. That's just part of my personality. But then it became, okay, this is a big problem that really needs to get fixed. And once I started looking at it that way, then it became like, okay, this is what I'm going to dedicate the next several months of my life to in terms of free time.
So the itch became the drive.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
And like I said, is the rebase itself fun to code? Honest, if I'm being totally honest, no. It's a royal pain in the ass.
Okay.
It is implementing code that has already been implemented before. It's not exactly fun. It is tedious. It is tedious and repetitive work. However, getting through that so that way we can get to a point that we can, or at least for me personally, that I can start looking at other things and stop thinking about this rebase or going, well, I wish I could do this, but the rebase is in the way. That's also a motivational factor for me. Like, I want to be able to be able to use the creative side of my brain again and not have to do this, for lack of better words, PM and role and constantly thinking about how to reinvent the wheel. So that's the fun side of it, is being able to, you fix a bug and people are like, oh, yay, thank you so much, and like, that in and of itself is rewarding. Just being able to see people finally get to do the stuff that they want to do. I don't think anyone really wants to do the rebase. However, it is, a task of necessity, so it has to be done. And that's true for both in professional programming and, nobody wants to go back and look at everything you've done before and figure out how to do it again. People enjoy doing the new stuff and the fresh stuff. But things are what they are, so again, I want to see the server succeed and continue to move forward. I know there's lots of plans for the future of the server and additional content, and in order to get there, we got to go through this hellhole first.
Thank you for your drive and passion and your itch to get us through this hellhole.
Yeah, we really do. You're doing the Lord's work.
You reminded me of this old Twitter post. It says the first thing our new hire did was fix a bug that's been bugging him forever as a user prior to joining.
Oh, I've heard that.
Yeah, he then breathed a sigh of relief and submitted his 2 weeks notice. WTF. It's like that, but I think, I don't know, to me that captures that feeling of like, okay, I want to get this solved because it's bugging me at this point.
Yeah,
so appreciate
very
the work.
accurate. Very accurate. I might take a vacation after the reboot.
I would. Fuck yeah, dude. Go to Hawaii. It's beautiful. I love it there. All right, so I have one final question, and then I'll turn it over to DA and Quetch if there's anything they want to ask. I mean, before we get into it, thank you so much for your time. This has been really enlightening. Thank you for your candid answers and for giving us the time, and the exclusive rights to talking to you first. We really do appreciate it. So the last one I have is a fun one, I hope. It's not anything that was, that we mentioned that we were going to ask, but it has nothing to do with anything bad. So, as we all know, a lot of retail has changed, and it does not things are not the same as they were 20 years ago, right? And if we were able to have those things from 20 years ago, we could more accurately replicate those things and have a server that was actually, 100% authentic, error retail. So my question to you is this. If you could make a phone call, a la like Doctor Who, and call somebody 20 years ago who's sitting at their PS2 in front of a TV playing Final Fantasy XI right now, and you could ask them to check something for you so that you had that information so you could put it in with definitive proof because you could see somebody playing it from that era, what would that thing be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. This is going to sound weird, possibly, but I would actually want the original AV. The original AV. If you've ever done research on AV, there is a lot of notes on there, especially current notes, but there is very little from the original inception of AV, pre-Nuke Wall, pre-Dark Knight Nerve, pre all of that stuff. That information would be so extremely helpful. I'll just say I've looked into some of that stuff, and I would say that I have found so much conflicting info from tinfoil hat ideas and all of that stuff. And I think it would be having someone actually have reliable video data and packet data would be absolutely amazing, because there's been a lot of servers, or some servers have it, some servers don't. The servers that do have it, they've done research as best as they can, but the original OG AV stuff was never really captured. I mean, it came out, I think it was the first patch after Treasures launched, which I guess not a lot of people actually realize that AV didn't launch until the first patch after Treasures release.
It's like Limbus didn't come out until like a month before Treasures or something like that.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. Yeah, it was very close, and
maybe 3, but yeah, it was shortly before.
But since that time, a lot of people have tried to encompass what was the original AV with really janky forum posts and some information from random posts on BG forums and this, that, and the other thing. But no one seems to have that original, notes from the original implementation. And I've seen a lot of ideas, but no substantiating evidence. And now at this point, it's largely impossible to get it, because while they've AV is very similar to what it was. It is obviously not the same as what it was when it first launched. So that is one of the few things that is very hard to get an accurate, true, original release data on anymore.
Interesting. Would you want to release it like it was when it was released? Because wasn't it kind of like a meme that like you weren't supposed to beat it, like they never wanted you to beat it, and then even when they cheesed it and beat it like the way they weren't supposed to, nothing dropped. Like, wasn't that?
Yeah, no, you remember right. It wasn't, and I think Kipling has a post to the Square Enix interview with Tanaka where he actually admitted that when they released AV, they did not intend for it to be killed. And so, but I think it would be a great, like, it's something that if we had that original implementation, we could put our player base up to the challenge and say, based on the OG original, no cheese, is it actually possible to kill it or not? I think it would be
that would be crazy.
Like, 20 plus years later, the original OG implementation of AV without using a wall and without Dark Knight zerging it and all this other stuff actually got killed, as even though it was never intended to be killed at that point in time. Granted, like I said, players figured out cheesy methods to do it, like the nuke wall or the justice wall, or is it prudence wall? I can't remember. And then just straight out Dark Knight zerging it. And I actually remember on retail, so I played it on Carbuncle. We had there was one day where I was probably out there for 6 or 7 hours trying to help on the sidelines.
Damn.
And it was just a mess of people throwing their bodies at it to keep it from depopping and trying all sorts of things. And that was truly fun because the entire server basically tried to come together to try and take that thing down. And it's something I never saw get killed until it was changed. So
that's a fantastic answer. I was not expecting that, but I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, that would be cool. If I had a choice and I could go back, and it would be, can you grab the actual era retail enmity formula for me so I can give it to my boys here at Horizon and they can put in correct enmity caps.
To be fair, enmity is a little wonky, but I do believe that enmity is, if you really want to dig into enmity, you can look at the LSB code because eventually, we will end up using that. Enmity, I do believe, is handled slightly different there. So maybe things change on the enmity side. I don't know for sure, but
that's awesome.
How it will play for us. But I know, enmity is a quite intricate beast. So
yeah. Yep.
Do you have an answer to that prepared, LTL?
For what?
For your question, your own answer?
Oh.
Then off the top of my head, I would say the pathing and mesh of the mobs that walk around.
I will give you so pathing and nav mesh and line of sight, right? Those are two things that have always been somewhat problematic on Horizon. I will say that, and I have no ETA on this, but we do have two really great and incredibly knowledgeable people working on nav mesh. When I know they've been working on some zones right now. For instance, Dynamis Juno. I hate that zone so much. They have actually worked. One of them actually showed me they had worked really, really hard on completely re-implementing the nav mesh there, and things are no longer jumping up and down, cutting through walls and bushes. And mobs are following the stairs to go up to the upper levels and stuff like that. So I will say that there is work being done on nav mesh across many different zones. Actually, sometimes when a zone crashes, it's actually related to the nav mesh. And so that is actually something that is being worked on, but there is no ETA on it, and we don't put pressure on them because I don't know how they do their magic, but I'm not going to push them beyond their limit. Whenever they're done, they're done.
Right.
Also, line of sight. Line of sight is actually a separate nav mesh, essentially, that does calculations on walls. There's actually a file for navigation and a file for line of sight. I believe line of sight is something that is going to get looked at after the nav mesh gets finished. So both of those things are being worked on. And hopefully we, again, no ETA, but I'm excited to have the new nav mesh that they're working on whenever it's done.
I didn't
So
expect
that'll
a
be a-
response. Thank you.
That'll be a huge improvement. But yeah, that is something that, again, is in the pipeline. It's literally 2 guys that we have working on that. And so
Thank you, 2
They're
guys.
doing-
I appreciate you out there.
yeah,
Whoever you are, 2 guys.
they absolutely amazing. I tried to do it myself, and I'm like, I can't even begin to wrap my head around how they can do it so quickly.
Some people are good at close-up magic. Some people have the more the extravagant stuff. David Copperfield, so everybody stays in their own lane. It seems like when they're doing their profession, no, what their expertise is in, I should say, what their expertise is in. So thank you.
Cool.
Question?
Anything you guys want to add at the end here?
Listen, I got one actually. I would
Let's hear
ask a thief to go shoot bloody bolts at every damn thing on the planet, and show us how much it's draining for, so we can heal our damn HP.
Wow,
So
so
one thing that
selfish,
slows me
Twitch.
down-
He just wants the thief stuff.
Selfish.
Thief solos really well. It just in spats, and then you
So
gotta
you gotta-
rest.
You gotta crack a club on run 19. I never want to hear any bitching from you.
That's
ever
what
again.
everybody tells me. I say,
Yeah, well, learn.
I
learn
have
to
a
talk.
complaint.
That's-
It's like, well, how many runs did it take you to get your KC? I'm like, well, it's
Yep.
not what I'm talking about.
Get some Trotter's boots. We'll talk.
I'll add in one more thing for question on that one. So basically, and this kind of ties into the Rebase as a whole, or the private server project community. And like DA, you were like, how can I help type thing. So if people are interested in helping on the Rebase itself, that is going to end up happening within our internal code base. So if you're not a part of staff, you won't be able to directly help with the Rebase. However, there is a lot of ways that you can still help and contribute, because let's say there's not a quest that's implemented, or let's say like Bloody Bolts, and you really don't, you want to get those working again. One of the biggest and best things that can help get things working is, especially if it's not an LSB, and LSB is open source, so you guys can go to LSB and look at their code base and see if things are there or not. But getting people to help capture retail data. If you see a quest that's not working, if you have a retail account, please go to retail and capture it. There is actually a Discord server dedicated just to capturing things. And like, let's say you want to help, but you don't know of a quest that's broken. Inside of that Discord server, there are developers from all the different code bases that say, hey, I need this piece of data captured. If you can go in, and when I say capture, all you're doing is you're running a specific add-on that captures packet data, and you're recording a video basically of you going through the quest. And you would go do those things on retail and then just drop the files, and you respond back and say, hey, here's your data. The developer will take that data and then actually turn it into code that we can use on the private server community. That is one of the biggest things that can help with private servers and community or the private server community at large, but also with Horizon and getting error accuracy, such as, like the ranged accuracy thing. People were going on to retail from Horizon and testing a bunch of different scenarios and capturing that data so that way it can get implemented properly on the private server side.
That was an amazing thing to watch. I've been tracking that thread, I think, almost since it was made, and really cool. I don't know if we've talked about it in the pod, but essentially the way ranged accuracy / ranged attack has been handled on Horizon and possibly all other private servers, our knowledge of ranged accuracy and ranged attack involving sweet spot and distance has been revolutionized through a couple of people in this one thread in the Horizon Discord.
Yeah, that's a perfect example, though, of like how you can still help without being part of like the Horizon dev team or whatever. And you technically don't really need any coding background. You need to know how to play Final Fantasy XI, which I'm sure most of us do.
I'm out. I'm out.
Some
there
days,
it goes.
sometimes.
For the code savvy people that don't have retail accounts, I mean, there are still, while LSB, like I said, is open source, they have bug reports, just like the ASB had a bug report section. If you're code savvy, go in there and help them. Just know that they're a lot more particular. You got to be I wouldn't use it as a basis to learn things off of. Maybe, go hit up like Code Academy or something and go through like learn some of the code. And once you're comfortable with the code, though, go into LSB and help them fix bugs, because eventually those bug fixes that they pull in are eventually going to get pulled into Horizon too, especially post Rebase. So there are still plenty of ways for people to help.
That's what Hook and Damaris were talking about. Don't use it as your entry point. Their standards are there. You got to make sure you kind of know your basis before kind of doing that stuff. So thank you for reiterating that.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. So any final thoughts, DA, Quetch, before I give us the big old wrap up here?
No.
I mean, I always see them in the comment section afterward. I'm like, why didn't they ask this? And I always feel bad about it. So be sure to, I guess, put it in the comment section about the questions we should forward on or be able to try to get answers from. So
yeah, we would love to do future interviews with other people. We'd love to have you back, Beasty. This has been an absolute treat and our pleasure. Thank you so much for giving us a couple of hours of your life and like really going into pretty good detail about what you're doing, what the progress is, and kind of what we're still waiting for. I think that this is the kind of information that the community definitely wants and needs to hear. And the fact that you've come on here and shared it with us means a lot to us and hopefully will mean a lot to them. So thank you again. Thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure. With that being said, though, this is the end of another amazing episode of the Level Sync podcast. I want to thank you all for coming in and checking us out. Our links are going to be down below and on the YouTube video and the Spotify's and the iTunes things where you podcast stuffs, and click and on YouTube, make sure you slam on that notification button and make sure to ring that bell and make sure that your Carby's doing a suck. And
Wow.
Yeah, the last second had to get it. It was perfect. Anyways, guys, thank you again so much. We'll be back as soon as we can. This has been me, Lost Time Lord, our good close friend DA Soccer, Mr. Quetch, and of course, once again, the Beasty. Thank you again for being here. We'll see you guys next time. Take care of yourselves.
Bye.
Adios.